Good morning. What's going on? It's Kyle Henderson, BamaInsider.com. Hope you had a great college football Saturday. I know I did. There was tons of football, right? I mean, in the morning you had Oklahoma taking on Texas. It was Jalen Hurts' first test of the season. Passed it with flying colors against Texas. Then you had Alabama taking on Texas A&M, and that's what we'll talk about on this particular video. You also had in the evening cap, you had LSU taking on Florida. LSU wins by 14. And then you also had the shocker of the day, Georgia being upset by South Carolina. Now, as I always do on Sunday, I recap Alabama's previous game with my 10 takeaways. You can read the entire version on BamaInsider.com. Leading off the show, Tua Tagovailoa shines in Texas. This is point number one. It was another marvelous day for junior quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who's 21 of 34, 293 yards passing with 4 touchdowns and just 1 interception. That was his only interception so far this season, which is pretty remarkable. On the day, Tagovailoa threw 4 touchdowns to 4 different wide receivers and became the all-time leader at Alabama with most touchdowns thrown in a career at 81 overall. Let that sink in, right? With his 293 yards against Texas A&M, junior quarterback Tua Tagovailoa has accumulated 6,613 yards passing in 30 games to rank third all-time at Alabama. Unbelievable numbers being put up by Tua Tagovailoa in 3 games against SEC opponents this season. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa has thrown for 1,000 yards with 15 touchdowns, only 1 interception, 75 of 106. Those last 2 stats provided by the University of Alabama's athletic department. Now let's kind of dive into these stats real quick before we continue. As you can see, I'll put the stats up on the screen right now, but Alabama had 448 yards of offense. This was the first time of the season that Alabama was held under 500 yards. Cause for concern? Not really, because Alabama still scored 47 when they're averaging 51 points per game. Passing yards, as I just talked about, 293 yards. Rushing yards, 155 yards. And I thought Najee did a good job, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. I thought Brian Robinson also did a great job. I do like the way that Alabama offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian is using those two to kind of put those two in four-wheel drive, being that they are bigger backs. Penalties, too many penalties for this team. Third down conversions, 8 for 13, and then the red zone there, 4 for 5. Time of possession, 30 minutes and 50 seconds compared to Texas A&M's 29 and 4 seconds. So let's continue with my 10 takeaways. And point number 2, Jalen Waddle finally has his breakout game. And how nice was it to see Jalen Waddle on that screen pass? I mean, he caught 31. He caught the screen and then takes it 31 yards to the house. And no one's touching Jalen Waddle when he has the football. I mean, he's the most electric football player in college football. Surprisingly, was that punter from Texas A&M who was tackling everyone. I mean, in my count, he stopped, 2 or 3 special teams touchdowns? I mean, he's the punter. He's the kicker. I mean, great job on his part. The Houston, Texas native shined in his home state, racking up 48 yards receiving and another 128 yards by way of punt returns. Waddle caught his first touchdown on a screen pass in the first quarter when Tagovailoa hit the sophomore speedster on a screen pass, which Waddle then did the rest from 31 yards out. It's clear that when Waddle has the football, he's among the most dangerous offensive threats in all of college football. Glad to see him finally getting his. I know, as a sophomore, he has the talent, right? I mean, he has the talent to do what all these other wide receivers are doing at Alabama, but for him to finally get his opportunity, especially in Texas against the atmosphere as electric as Kyle Field, good for him. I thought the offensive line play was fantastic. I thought Landon Dickerson did a great job at the center position. Even Tua Tagovailoa felt the same after the game. Tagovailoa said this: "I think that Landon did a great job," said Tagovailoa, "with communicating up front, sliding guys over to protect me, and I think Deontay Brown did a great job as well. We had some miscommunication up front in the first half, but I think we cleaned it up in the second half." Again, you can read all this on BamaInsider.com. I really like this offensive line. I think this is going to be a pivotal change for Alabama's offense moving forward. I think when you look at it, you have on the outside, you have Leatherwood, then you have Evan Neal, and then you have at the center position, you have Landon Dickerson, who I think is capable enough of being the center for this team moving forward. Then at the right guard position, you have Deontay Brown, who I thought did a great job. I mean, when you spot shadow him and you really focus in on him and how he played last night against Texas A&M, I think he did a stellar job. And then outside right tackle, you have Jedrick Wills. So I think that's Alabama's best 5 linemen. What do you think? Sound off in the comment box. I'd be curious to hear your take on Alabama's offensive line. I thought they did a great job creating pockets, establishing the run, opening up blocks. I thought Texas A&M had a good defensive line, so it was a good test to see Alabama go up against a good defensive line. My next point, I'm talking about pressure on the quarterbacks. It was finally an awakening for Alabama's pass rush. I mean, where has it been all season? I mean, yesterday they had 5 sacks, which was a season high for the Crimson Tide. Nick Saban had to say this about the pass rush. This was the first game he's been healthy, and he's referring to Terrell Lewis. It was the first week that he's been able to practice. He practiced a little bit before the Ole Miss game, and he played some of the Ole Miss game, not even that. But because he was able to practice a little bit more, I think he was more active in the game today, more confident, and probably more explosive as he was healthier. Anthony Jennings and Terrell Lewis lead this team with 4 sacks apiece, and I think these two are going to provide Alabama's defense the pass rush that it needs, right? This is the first game that we really saw these guys getting after the quarterback, bringing heat on the quarterback. Terrell Lewis had 2 sacks and also had 2 quarterback pressures. Anthony Jennings was so hungry to get after the quarterback, he nearly jumped off sides. What was it, 3 or 4 times? I do like these guys getting after the quarterback. How about Christian Barmore, right? I mean, he continues to just be a handful for offensive linemen. I'm surprised he doesn't play more because he just seems like he has the ability to get past offensive linemen, to get pressure on the quarterback. I like DJ Dell, of course, yeah, but Christian Barmore on pass rushing situations can really get after the quarterback. I really like the way that he's been playing this year. I even got another 15-yard penalty. I mean, he's just an aggressive dude, right? All right, my 5th point, this is containment on Texas A&M quarterback Kellen Mond. I mean, we all knew what Kellen Mond did last year to Alabama, and this particular year, he had a good game as well. Kid balls out. In total, he was 24 of 42, 264 yards with 2 touchdowns, and ran the football 16 times for 90 yards. Here's what Nick Saban had to say on Kellen Mond. We were better today until the end. I think we got a little bit tired, referring to the defense, said Saban. We got out of the rushing lanes a bit. This guy's a good athlete, referring to Kellen Mond. He took off a couple of times and for a couple big plays. Our goal was to make him throw from inside the pocket, not wanting him to do what he did last year. And he didn't for a long time, but then he did at the end of the game. Hats off to Kellen Mond. I mean, that kid's a baller. He's not the most efficient quarterback in terms of passing, but I think his dual threat ability gave Alabama fits. And I do think that a running quarterback poses challenges for this particular defense. I mean, you look at a guy that could probably be a little bit more accurate, maybe like a Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts. How would Alabama's defense fare against those guys? It would be curious to see, right? All right, a lot of penalties. Too many penalties, 11 penalties, which tied a season high. They had 11 penalties against South Carolina several weeks back. 11 penalties, and they range from, let me see if I can find them. Roughing the passer, substitution infraction, personal foul. There was the ejection of Devontae Smith. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Devontae Smith going forward. When Saban was asked about what happened to Devontae Smith towards the end of the game, he said basically he got hit, punched, and retaliated. So we have to wait and see what the conference office has to say to see what Devontae's status is. It was offsetting fouls, obviously. Their player shouldn't have punched him, but Devontae should have had the discipline not to hit him back. Yeah, it's always the second person who gets caught in a situation like that. This time it was Devontae Smith. Now, if the SEC office does decide that he should have been ejected and it was the right call, then he will have to sit out that first half of the Tennessee game, which would be a blow to Alabama. But then again, Alabama has so many weapons that you just kind of sub in these guys. But still, it's always that second guy. But then again, the things happen in the heated moment. Number 7, special teams racked up yards and points. The Crimson Tide had 128 punt return yards from Jalen Waddle, 131 kickoff yards from Henry Ruggs. That's mind-blowing, right? When you think about it, special teams doing their thing. Also, Alabama blocked their second punt of the season with Ali Cajo, and that was who blocked the first punt. Last time, Ali Cajo fouled on the football in the end zone. This time it was Terrell Shavers who scored his first touchdown. And then Joseph Bolivas, he hit 2 field goals, one from 27 yards and from 35 yards out. The bad news is that Alabama had a PAT block, but, we're not even fazed by that anymore. People that cover Alabama, I mean, you really have to wait till Alabama makes that PAT before you tweet out anything because, there's a great opportunity that something that could go wrong. Skylar DeLong had 2 punts for 59 yards to average of 29.5 per punt, just not acceptable. Point number 8, Alabama's run game was productive. For a second time this season, Najee Harris rushed for over 100 yards, 20 attempts for 114 yards. I thought he ran the football very effective. I thought the offensive line did a good job. I thought Najee Harris did a great job after first contact. And then Brian Robinson had 10 rushes for 51 yards. And same thing, he's very difficult to tackle on first contact. He has that ability to continue to drag defenders for 3-4 yards sometimes. I mean, he's just a big dude. These guys are 230 pounds, and when you can keep these guys fresh, it's productive for Alabama's offense. On the season, Harris has rushed for 451 yards off 74 attempts, so only 1 touchdown. It's probably frustrating to him. And Brian Robinson has carried the football 56 times for 259 yards with 3 touchdowns. Now, I want to get your take in the comment box, all right? Now, I will talk about this more tonight on my call-in show at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Please call in 205-686-3604. I'd be eager to hear from you. But here's my question for you. Right now, right today, who are the best 4 teams in college football? Sound off in the comment box. Here are my 4 top teams in college football as of today. Number 1, Alabama Crimson Tide. They beat Texas A&M 47-28 in a hostile environment. The Crimson Tide continues to showcase their offensive firepower, and while their defense has showed signs of inexperience, the defense recorded a season-high 5 sacks, as we talked about, against Texas A&M. Outside linebacker Terrell Lewis finally looks 100% healthy, which is great news for Alabama Crimson Tide fans because he can get to the quarterback like nobody else in college football. Alabama does have a tough back-end schedule with LSU and Auburn in waiting. They also got Tennessee. They also got Mississippi State. Western Carolina is there as that warm-up game before Auburn. So Alabama at the number 1 spot. And the number 2 spot, you got Ohio State. The Buckeyes' best win this season is beating Michigan State 34-10. They also beat Cincinnati 42-0. On the season, Ohio State has looked like a complete team. Justin Fields is a very capable quarterback. J.K. Dobbins, a very good running back. The Buckeyes, though, still have to play a very daunting back-end schedule. Wisconsin, Penn State, and Michigan all on that back-end schedule. And then the Clemson Tigers, I have them at number 3. I mean, they should have lost this year, but they've continued to win. They've won 21 games in a row, believe it or not. Trevor Lawrence has continued to improve. I know he didn't have the best start of the season, but he's looked to find his rhythm, and he has a dangerous wide receiving core. Along with a very dangerous running back. They got a good defense. Their back-end schedule, very favorable. If they continue to win, you got to think Clemson's there in the playoffs once again. And then LSU, originally I had Oklahoma at the number 4 spot, but then I swapped Oklahoma and LSU just because I felt that beating Florida was a better victory than Oklahoma beating Texas. LSU defeated previously unbeaten Florida Saturday evening by 2 scores, led by Joe Burrow at quarterback, who was playing at a very high level. The Tigers are capable of making a run at the playoffs. The Tigers still face Auburn on October 26th and then head to Tuscaloosa to face off with the Alabama Crimson Tide on November 9th. My bubble teams, I got Oklahoma at 6-0. They beat Texas 34-27, led by Jalen Hurts, who continues to play at a very high level and continues to prove that he can win weekly. And then you have Wisconsin. They beat Michigan State 38-0. Now check this out. Now, when are we going to start taking Wisconsin serious? They have beat, of their 6 opponents, they have shut out 4. They have the best running back in all of college football in Jonathan Taylor. Let's not forget about Wisconsin, right? When we talk about the playoffs, I'll be curious to see when Wisconsin and Ohio State meet up. Hey, catch my call-in show tonight, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Call-in number is 205-686-3604. You can catch this complete top 10 takeaways on BamaInsider.com. Think about becoming a subscriber. You get all the premium information, all the recruiting scoop, everything you want at BamaInsider.com. Reporting from a beautiful day in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com.